The Texas sun was sinking low over the rolling plains, painting the horizon in molten gold and bruised violet. The Hale Ranch stood in that quiet stretch of nowhere, just land, fences, and the long, hollow whistle of the wind. Jacob Hale stood by the corral, his broad shoulders bowed beneath the weight of another endless day. His hands, rough from years of work, clutched a coil of rope as his dog, Gus, padded silently at his side. It had been 5 years since the telegram arrived, the one that said his wife, Clara, had died in the fever outbreak near the border. 5 years since his world had gone still. Every day since, Jacob had lived like a ghost wandering his own land. He didn't speak much, didn't smile at all, and spent his nights on the porch staring into the darkness that never spoke back. He told himself he'd made peace with it, that some things were just meant to be buried by time and dust. But deep down, even as the world around him carried on, something inside Jacob had never stopped listening for her voice. That morning, the wind shifted, an omen, though he didn't know it yet. He was mending a fence post when he heard the distant creak of wagon wheels. No one visited the Hale Ranch anymore, and certainly not from the East Road, which had been nearly abandoned after the spring floods. He straightened, squinting through the haze of heat and dust. A small wagon rattled slowly toward the house, drawn by a tired mule and driven by an older man in a wide hat. Beside him sat 2 small girls, their bonnets flapping like pale butterflies in the wind. Jacob frowned, his guard rising. Strangers on his land were rare, and never a good sign. He wiped his hands on his jeans and stepped forward as the wagon rolled to a stop a few yards away. The old man climbed down first, his boots crunching on the dry earth. "Morning," he called, voice low and rasped by travel. "You Jacob Hale?" Jacob's brow furrowed. "Who's asking?" he said, his voice calm but cautious. The man tipped his hat. "Name's Abel Carter. I've been on the trail a long while. Found these little ones down by the San Pedro crossing. Their mama, she didn't make it. But before she passed, she gave me a letter. Said to find a man named Jacob Hale in Laredo. Said he'd know what to do." Jacob stiffened, a strange unease tightening his chest. "You sure she said my name?" he asked slowly. The old man nodded toward the girls. "Ask him yourself." The 2 girls sat perfectly still, their small faces flushed from the sun and dust. One clutched a faded rag doll, the other's bonnet had slipped, revealing a tangle of golden brown curls. But it was their eyes that stopped Jacob cold, green eyes, bright and steady, the same color as Clara's. For a heartbeat, he couldn't breathe. The first girl climbed down from the wagon, tiny boots kicking up dust. Her voice trembled as she spoke. "Are you our daddy?" The words hit him like a hammer to the chest. He froze, every muscle tightening, as the sound of those small voices pulled open a door he thought was long sealed shut. The second girl slid down beside her, eyes wide and shimmering with something that looked like hope. "Mama said if we ever got lost," she whispered, "to find Daddy Jacob Hale. She said you'd keep us safe." Jacob's throat went dry. He took a slow step forward, his boots heavy as stone. "What did you just say?" he asked, voice low, almost broken. The girl lifted her chin with innocent certainty. "Our mama's name was Clara Hale." The world tilted. Jacob felt his knees weaken. He stared at them, 2 living, breathing reminders of the woman he'd buried in his heart years ago. He looked to Abel Carter, his voice barely holding steady. "You said she didn't make it." The old man's expression softened. Fever got her bad, but she made me promise to bring these little ones here. Said you'd understand." Jacob's hands shook as the man reached into his coat and pulled out a folded letter. The paper was creased and smudged, edges darkened with sweat and dirt. Jacob took it with trembling fingers, unfolding it slowly. The handwriting was unmistakable, soft loops and flourishes he'd traced with his thumb once upon a time. "My dearest Jacob, if you're reading this, it means I couldn't come home. The fever took me farther than I could fight, but I couldn't let them grow up without knowing you. I had to disappear once, to protect them. There were men after me then, men who would have hurt us both. I kept them safe as long as I could. Forgive me, my love. Tell them I never stopped thinking of you. Clara." The words blurred as Jacob's vision swam. He sank to his knees in the dust, the letter trembling in his hand. The wind picked up, whispering through the grass as though carrying her voice with it. The girls looked at him with silent worry until, finally, he looked up, his eyes full of tears he hadn't shed in 5 long years. "Come here," he said softly. They hesitated for only a second before running into his arms, small bodies pressing against the chest of the man they'd never met but somehow already knew. He held them close, the smell of dust and sunlight and childhood filling his lungs. For the first time in years, Jacob felt something break open inside him, something fragile, warm, and alive. Above them, the sky stretched endless and blue, and in the wind that brushed his cheek, Jacob could almost swear he heard Clarice whisper, "They found you, Jacob. They found home." For 3 days, the Hale Ranch came alive again. The sounds that had vanished from Jacob's world, laughter, chatter, the thud of little feet, filled the air like sunlight breaking through clouds. The twins, Lily and Rose, turned his quiet house into something close to home again. They followed him everywhere, asking about every horse, every bird, every tool in his barn. Lily, bold and curious, wanted to ride the gray mare before breakfast. Rose, shy and soft-spoken, preferred to sit under the willow tree and hum while she played with Gus. Jacob found himself smiling again, though it felt strange, like rediscovering a muscle he hadn't used in years. But even in those golden moments, shadows lingered. Clarice's letter stayed folded in his coat pocket, heavy as a stone against his heart. There were things she hadn't said, things buried between the lines. Every night, when the girls were asleep, Jacob sat by the window with a lamp burning low, reading the letter over and over until he could almost hear her voice whispering through the paper. "Forgive me for what I had to do." What had she done? Who were the men she'd feared? Why had she never come home when the fever ended? On the morning of the 4th day, a rider appeared at the edge of the property. The dust trail rose behind him like a ribbon of smoke. Jacob watched from the porch as the man drew closer, broad-shouldered, wearing a star on his vest. Sheriff Duggan. Jacob knew him from years back, a man whose eyes saw too much and missed nothing. The sheriff dismounted, tipping his hat. "Morning, Jacob," he said, glancing toward the open door where 2 small faces peeked out from behind the curtain. "I heard talk down in town that you got yourself some visitors." Jacob stepped down from the porch, his voice measured. "That's right. Came 3 days ago with a man named Abel Carter. He left after dropping them off." Dugan's jaw tightened. "Funny thing about that name. Ain't no Abel Carter registered in San Pedro or Laredo. I checked the mail coach ledgers myself." Jacob frowned. "You saying the old man lied?" "Not saying anything yet," the sheriff replied. "But word from down south says a wagon was found near the border, burned out, with 3 bodies inside. 2 men and a woman. The woman had a wedding ring marked with the initials CH." Jacob felt the world shift under his boots. His stomach twisted. "You're wrong," he said roughly. "Clarice's grave is." But he stopped. Because there was no grave. No body had ever been sent home. Only a telegram, a few vague words, and a silence that lasted 5 years. The sheriff looked toward the twins again. "You sure about who they belong to, Jacob?" Jacob's voice broke a little. "They've got her eyes, Duggan. Her handwriting. She wrote me that letter. I'd stake my life on it." Duggan sighed, pulling off his hat. "I don't doubt they're yours. I'm just saying something ain't sitting right. If Clarice been running from someone all these years, whoever they were might not be done yet. And if that wagon we found belonged to the folks who helped her, you might have danger headed your way." Jacob's gaze drifted toward the distant fence line, where the land met the sky in a blur of gold. "If anyone comes for those girls," he said quietly, "they'll have to go through me first." That night, as the wind picked up again, the ranch felt different. The air carried a scent of rain, the kind that rolled in from the mountains without warning. Jacob tucked the girls into bed and sat beside them for a long time, watching their chests rise and fall. They looked so much like Clara when she slept, peaceful, unguarded, safe. He brushed a strand of hair from Lily's forehead and whispered, "I'm not letting anything happen to you. Not again." When he stepped back into the main room, Gus was growling low by the door. The sound made Jacob freeze. He moved slowly toward the window, his hand brushing the rifle that leaned by the wall. Out on the horizon, through the silver wash of moonlight, he saw the faint flicker of a lantern, moving, not still. Someone was out there. He waited. The light disappeared behind the ridge. For a moment, everything was silent again. Maybe it was nothing. A ranch hand from a neighboring spread, a drifter passing through. But deep down, Jacob felt it in his bones. This wasn't over. The next morning confirmed it. As the girls played in the yard, Jacob went to fetch water from the well, and found a single horseshoe print by the back fence. Fresh. Too fresh. The soil was still damp where the weight had pressed in. He crouched, fingers tracing the outline. Whoever it was had come close. Watching. He turned toward the house, heart pounding. The girls were chasing Gus across the yard, their laughter bright against the wind. For a moment, they were all light and innocence again, and Jacob couldn't bear to shatter it with his fear. He forced a smile and called them in for breakfast. Still, he couldn't shake the feeling that Clara's past had come riding after them. Her last words echoed in his mind like thunder rolling through the canyons. Forgive me for what I had to do. Maybe it wasn't guilt she'd meant. Maybe it was warning. That night, as rain began to fall softly against the windows, Jacob sat alone by the fire. The girls were asleep again, their small hands curled beneath their chins. He unfolded the letter once more, staring at the ink until the edges blurred. He pressed the page to his chest and whispered, "If you're out there somewhere, Clara, I'll protect them. I'll finish what you started." Outside, lightning flashed across the plains, and for an instant, Jacob thought he saw the silhouette of a rider on the ridge, motionless, watching the ranch. When the thunder rolled, the figure was gone. If stories like this touch your heart, hit that red subscribe button right now, and don't forget to tap the bell icon so you never miss the next emotional story we share. Because every story deserves to be felt, not just heard.